All right, picture this. You're surfing social media and see a tarot card spread. Later, you visit a neighbor and notice a shrine to their beloved dead. And then it's your birthday. And you make a wish before blowing out the candles. Now, which of these is magic? And why is that? Here's the thing. Magic isn't locked away in video games and fantasy novels. It's everywhere around us. But that question, what is magic, is really tricky because there's a lot of possible answers and a lot of feelings involved. For some, magic is superstition. It's anti-science. For others, practicing magic is a sin. It's against their religion's doctrines. For still others, that word magic is a slur used against their religion. But for still others, magic is wonderful. It enriches their lives. For many, magic is the defining practice of their religion. So this word magic, it's doing a lot of heavy lifting, and it's no wonder it's controversial. I've spent the last decade seeing how people remix religion, pop culture, science, and magic in amazing and creative ways. I love talking about it. Now, 7 is a wonderfully magical number. It's a prime number, magic enough. But across folklore and religion around the world, magic, or 7 being magical, is a recurring symbol. 7 days of the week, 7 deadly sins, 7 heavenly bodies in traditional astrology. So I want to share with you all 7 things I think everyone should know about magic. Number 1, stage magic is magic, but it's not the kind I'm talking about today. The art of illusion shares a history with magical and esoteric practices and beliefs. But with close-up magic like card tricks, pulling a rabbit out of a hat, the audience and the magician both know that it's a performance. The magic I'm talking about is connected to the ideas of the supernatural and the invisible. Number 2, people around the world are magical remixers. Religious studies scholars call this cultural remixing bricolage. And people remix pop culture, scientific, and religious ideas all the time to meet their spiritual needs. So whether it's an atheist who practices yoga and meditation, or a Christian who collects crystals because it enhances the good vibes, we're all constantly remixing practices that we pick up from friends, neighbors, coworkers, and social media. And it's not just practices. We remix beliefs too. In fact, according to 2 Pew Research studies, just as an example, about 30% of Americans believe in reincarnation. And another 57% of Americans believe animals have spirits or spiritual energy. That means a majority of y'all. All right, number 3, all of us think magically. It's hardwired, and I'm gonna prove it. All right, imagine you're on a date. And at some point they ask you, so, what's your sign? You know the answer, don't you? For me, it's Sagittarius. For you, it might be Pisces or Gemini or Scorpio. This is your astrological sun sign. And the reason we know our astrological sun signs today has a fun and quirky history that's only a couple generations old. But astrology has roots that go back thousands of years. And this isn't the only magic that's embedded in society. Here's another example. Let's say you're getting ready for a meeting and you have to print something out and the printer jams. So you plead with the printer. You threaten it as if it's going to start printing. Has that worked for y'all? Oh, okay, well. Not yet for me, but but keep trying. That's the thing. We're all hardwired to interact with objects in the physical world as if they were animate. We just do it. So whether it's knocking on wood to avert bad luck or blowing out those birthday candles, right? Magical practices and beliefs are a big part of everyday life. Number 4, science gets uncomfortable around magic, but it doesn't have to be. See, making a scientific experiment to prove or disprove magic would be really challenging, if not impossible. But we can empirically observe what people do and what people say they believe. So I'll give you an example. Around the world, in different cultures, some people hear voices or have visions. And it's often of angels, demons, or other supernatural entities. So about 10 years ago, anthropologist Dr. Tanya Luhrmann decided to investigate this. And instead of asking, are these experiences real, which would be really tough to test, she wondered, how do people understand their own experiences? So using ethnographic and experimental methods, she interviewed psychiatric patients in 3 different cultural contexts: San Mateo in the US, Chennai, India, and Accra, Ghana. And all of these patients experienced voices or visions of the unseen. And culture turned out to play a really big role. So for the American patients, they assumed they were experiencing psychosis because that's our cultural norm. What's more, the voices they heard were often invasive, harsh, frightening. But in Chennai, India, the voices were often helpful, even playful. And in Ghana, they were often also benevolent and sometimes even understood to be the voice of God. So as you can imagine, the social outcomes for these patients were quite diverse, with Americans really struggling to resist the voices, while in India and Ghana, many found it possible to coexist. So Dr. Luhrmann's research brings up really important questions about cultural context and mental health care. And it also makes me wonder, what else can we learn by empirically studying supernatural practices and beliefs? Number 5, that word magic is sometimes a weapon. When a culturally dominant community looks at the religious practices of a minority community, that smaller community is sometimes accused of practicing magic. And I'll give you an example. Lukumi, sometimes called Santeria, is an African diaspora religion. And this is a sophisticated community-focused spiritual system developed by African American and Afro-Caribbean communities during the transatlantic slave trade. In the United States today, Lukumi is often practiced quietly in people's homes, but in the media, it is often portrayed as magical, even sinister. And what's more, it's also confused with other African diaspora traditions, like Haitian Vodun, which is a different religion, and it's also misrepresented in the media. Calling these practices magic is deeply hurtful to these communities because there's a long history of social and legal harassment. In fact, according to a 1990 Supreme Court case, Lukumi has as much right to practice as every other religion in the United States without harassment. And yet scholars like Dr. Daniel Boas have shown that African diaspora traditions still face legal and social persecution in the United States today. Number 6, there are, however, a lot of people who do practice magic. No air quotes required. So rest assured, the world is full of magical practitioners. Whether it's witches of all gender identities, by the way, who practice contemporary pagan witchcraft as both a magical practice and a religion. Or ceremonial magicians who recreate spells from historic magical texts. Or digital sorcerers who make software for divination. Magical practices and beliefs are as diverse as humanity itself. Still, this brings up a really tricky question. how can you tell if somebody's practice is magic or religion or something else entirely? Well, here's the thing, you don't need to guess. Just listen to the words a person uses to describe their own practices, and they'll tell you. And finally, number 7, magic is creative. It shares this in common with science, pop culture, religion. It's an incredibly creative part of human life. So here's the thing, let's take a step back. Talking about religion makes people deeply uncomfortable, but religious literacy isn't about believing in any particular religion. It's about improving our understanding of a diverse world. And it's about understanding how supposedly neutral categories like science, secularism, religion, magic are sometimes used to privilege some communities while marginalizing others. So I've spent a decade learning about magic, and it's really helped me improve my appreciation of religious diversity around the world, as well as magical practices. See, magic is a lot like the moon. Even when she's hiding behind a cloud, she's still in the sky, high above us. And magic is our community's hidden heritage. Once we recognize this fact, magic reveals itself, and we realize it's been there all along. Magic is a deeply creative form of human expression, right alongside art, music, literature, dance, science, religion, even law. I really do believe when we learn to appreciate the magical, esoteric, and religious practices of others, we really can create a more inclusive and just world. Thank you.